19th chapter of the Gospel according to John. And I want to read just a couple of verses or so, starting at verse 26 on this Mother's Day. And I want to share with you some ways that we can love our mothers. If you remember it, then you need it reinforced. If you're not doing it, then you need to be doing it, so I'm going to tell you again. And you mothers and wives, if you remind your husbands that this is what they ought to be doing. Well, all of us, not just husbands, but wives also. Verse 26, when Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple standing by whom he loved, he saith unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then saith he to his disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour that disciple took her unto his own home. Of course, you remember the time here, the setting. Jesus was being crucified and Mary was there, and there at the foot of the cross. And you know, I can't imagine in my own heart how she must have felt. I mean, could you give your son? Could you give your son to die for a world that's really so many just don't care? And the one that's so precious to you, for God, it was his only begotten son. For Mary, it was her son. And there they were, and Jesus turns to John, a disciple whom he loved, and he says, take care of her. And he looks at his mother and says, let him stand in my place as your son. Now, John, I don't know how long he lived after that, but he must have lived a long life. And there's no doubt in my mind that he saw to Mary's needs. Jesus is on the cross bearing the weight of the sins of all the world. And yet he sees to it that his mother's taken care of. Jesus is gone. As God, Jesus is dealing with eternal matters. But as a man, Jesus is concerned about some earthly matters. And he's showing all of us today just how important it is to take care of our mamas, to show her love. As I've said before, you can't be wrong with your mama and right with God. If your mother's still alive, regardless of your age, regardless of her age, you can love her in these ways that I'm going to share with you this morning. Number one, you can love her verbally. Love is really, it's an intangible, I guess I could say that, something that you can't, quote, see. You can't purchase, you can't go down to the store and buy it in a nice little box and wrap it up with a ribbon and take it home with you. It's kind of like the wind. You can't see the wind, but you can certainly feel the evidence of it. You know when love is in a home, you know when it's not there. Your mama, your wife, your husband they know when you love them and when you don't. So love her verbally. Most we men have the philosophy, well, I love you, and if I ever change my mind, I'll tell you. You already know I love you, so why should I have to say that? I've told you that before. Oh, I show you love, don't I? Every once in a while, I take you out to eat, and sometimes I take you to a place that we don't go very often, and that's the kitchen. All that may be true, folks. But a woman needs to hear words verbally. They need to hear, I love you. Say it sometimes. The Bible says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let those of us who have a mama, we need to say, I love you sometimes. Listen, she constantly touched you. Oh, she may have had to or may have to hand you off to another. Her life endures some very heavy changes, but she deserves your touch. And she should never have to give you up completely. You need to remember that. Don't ever forget that as you think about your mama. Children need to hear, I love you. They need to hear you tell your wife. They need to hear you tell your mother that I love you. You need to model that love before them. And you need to do it before it's too late. I think of the 2 Timothy. Paul is very passionate. He's at the end of his life. And he writes Timothy and he says these words. Timothy, I need you to come to see me. I desire you. I want you to come to see me. I'm at the end of my life. And Timothy, if you're going to come at all, you best come before winter. And some of us need to get right with our mama. Some of us need to let our mamas know, I love you. I love you. Our wives need to hear that. Our children need to hear that. And our mothers need to hear that. Some men would say, I know, well, I'm just not turned that way. Well, guys, let me tell you something. I want to be real honest with you. If you're not turned that way, you just need to turn another way. And you need to do it. You need to tell your mama, your wife, I love you. Oh, I'm just not comfortable saying verbally, I love you. I show that, but I'm just not comfortable saying it. Well, you need to get uncomfortable and say it anyway. I love you. And then not only should you love her verbally, and can you love her verbally, but you can love her physically. When was the last time that you, if your mama's still living, or your wife, when was the last time you gave her a big old hug? Without her asking for it. Kissed her on the cheek. Give her a neck rub. Sometimes I like to walk up behind Marion when she's washing dishes. And I know some of you say, well, why aren't you washing them for her? I don't want to deprive her of that privilege, something that she enjoys so much. But I do walk up behind her and I'll rub her neck and so forth, and she'll tell me how much she appreciates that. Or just sit on the couch with her. Folks, I'm telling you now, it's not the kind of couch that you have in your home. It's who's sitting on that couch with you that makes a difference. When's the last time you helped your mama for a change? She's the first person you see who ever touched you. She wrapped you up in her womb for several months. And you came out and her first priority was to touch you, to kiss you, to caress you, to rub your little feet, to hold your little cheeks next to hers, to stroke your head. No doubt she gave you a finger so that you could grasp. No doubt that in your life she gave you some grooming by licking her fingers and putting your hair down. When you were little, she could say, give me sugar. You remember that? And you'd just pick her up and she'd accept that wet, sloppy kiss, and she'd even say thank you. And you'd give her a bear hug so tight that she couldn't get loose, and you'd wrap your little arms around her feet and she couldn't hardly move, and she'd drag you along. She changed your diapers. She potty trained you. She held the Kleenex while you blew your nose. She wiped food off your face. A lot longer, many more years than she ought to have had to do. And she now deserves your touch. She deserves your care. She should never have to give up on that completely, folks. It would mean more to her if she's still living. It would mean more to her today than any bouquet of flowers you could give her, any corsage, any box of candy or eating out or anything else that you could do for her. Just simply touch her. Hold her. I think I've shared this with you before, but when we could visit the nursing homes, Mary and I would visit, and these older folks, particularly the older ladies, would be sitting in wheelchairs up along the wall. And always there would be some 2 or 3 there of the older ladies that would reach out to us and want to touch us. They longed for, and we longed for that touch. There's a psychology of touch that God put within us. Mamas like to be touched. These folks, they were just starved for attention. Sometimes they're put in nursing homes and just forgotten. Nobody goes to see them. Had a deacon to tell me, his wife tell me one time, well, we can't visit our members in the nursing home. I just can't stand to see them that way. Well, you need to get over it. They're there, and we need to visit our mamas if they're there. That innocent brand of physical love that we need to give our mamas. But not only loving her verbally and physically, but love her patiently. And don't forget this. Mothers have an incredible job with no pay. No position in business can compare to what your mama has done and what she is doing. Think of the emotional, the spiritual commitment that your mama made to you and her husband, her family, your daddy. Don't ever make the mistake of saying, well, where do you work? I'm a housewife. Oh, you don't have a job. She has a job greater, more important than any other secular job that she could possibly have. Now, she may work a secular job. She may have a vocation and a career outside of the home, but her first career and her first purpose that God gave her, and she knows this, and she lives and fleshes this out with you and her family, is to be a wife and to be a mother. And she does all those other things and still is a wife and mother to her husband and to you. So love her patiently. Let me make a point here. In spite of all that she does, sometimes we get impatient with our mama. We get so used to her taking care of everything until, we just take it for granted. Those clothes are still dirty. You haven't washed them yet? You mean my favorite shirt is not ironed? You're out of my favorite cookies, Mama. Why didn't you bake them? You knew I wanted those. You knew I wanted that kind of gravy. You knew I wanted that kind of dish. Why didn't you cook it that way? Picking up after you. Picking you up at school. Being the taxi driver, taking you to all those Little League games and so forth and so on. And we could go on and on. Picked you up at school, but if she's just a few minutes late, you'd scold her and say, "Where have you been? I've been waiting all this time for you." What I'm saying is love her patiently. Because she's tender is no reason for you and me to take her for granted and to take advantage of her. It's a reason to be patient with her and to love her even more. And I say this, and I've said it before to teens and preteens, and we don't have many of those here this morning. But it's unfair, and maybe you can pass this along to your grandchildren and your children. It's unfair for you to be more kind and considerate and patient with your friends and your friend's mother than you are to your own mama. Are you with me? If you treated your friends like you treat your mama sometimes, and like we treat our mama sometimes, we wouldn't have any friends. And if we treated their mother like we treat our mother sometimes, their mother wouldn't let us come within a mile of her children. Your mom deserves better. She's not a rug to wipe every negative thought that we have on. And for we adults who have living mothers, love her patiently. Love her patiently. I want to read a letter James Dobson read on his program, Focus on the Family. Listen to these words. I suppose my upcoming birthday started my thoughts along these lines. This is a good time to tell you that what I truly want are things I can never get enough of, yet they are free. She said, I want the intangibles. And this letter was to her children. I would like for you to come and sit with me and for you to be relaxed. We can talk or we can just be silent. I would just like for us to be together. I need your patience when I don't hear what you say the first time. I know how tiresome it is always to be repeating, but sometimes I must ask you to repeat. I need your patience when I think too much about the past, with my slowness and with my set ways. I want you to be tolerant with what the years have done to me physically. Please be understanding about my personal care habits. I spill things. I lose things. I get unduly excited when I try to figure out my bank statements. I can't remember what time to take my medication or if I took it already. I take too many naps and sometimes sleep helps me to pass the day. Well, there you have it. Time, patience, and understanding. Those priceless gifts that I want. And finally, in his letter, the Apostle Paul wrote, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. And she said, I know I can too. It's a wonderful feeling to know his eyes on the sparrow, and I know that he cares for me. I guess being old is not so bad after all. And she signs it, Love, Mom. I had a funeral for a dear lady, 91 years old, yesterday. She called me down to see her, asked her daughter to, before she died. And God impressed upon my heart, I went right on last Thursday, wasn't it? And her daughter, Mary, and myself, we sit by her bed, and we talked and reminisced, and she laughed, and we all laughed and cried. And her daughter gave me some things that she wrote to her children and gave me a poem to read at her death that she signed to her children and to her friends, folks that she loved. And the name of the poem was, If Tomorrow Starts Without Me. And she said her greatest desire was to see her children and her loved ones saved so that she could see them again in heaven. Oh, that's a mama. Life doesn't come with a manual, but it comes with a mama. Mamas are like buttons. They hold things together. And we love you, and we ought to let our mamas know that. Love her patiently, then love her attentively. Mothers, listen to you or listen to us when we pour out our heart. She has a sympathetic ear and always has, and even as an adult, I know I wish I could have gone to my mother. She died when I was 4. But you that have had mothers, and those of you who have mothers that are living right now, you know that you've gone to her when you want someone who will really listen and understand. She'll always be right there by your side. And so oftentimes when you know that you're wrong, she just thinks that you're the greatest thing in all the world. And she still loves you unconditionally. I mean, you can be as mean as homemade sin, and she'll say, but he has a good heart. Or she has a good heart. No wonder we like to talk with Mom. She understands. You say, but she's always complaining. Just like you did when you were growing up. She talks about herself, and she asks the same questions over and over. Guess what? You did the same thing when you were growing up. In their older days, our parents have so many fears, so many anxieties. I pray that we treat them as we'd hope to be treated when we are in their shoes. And if we live long enough, we'll be there. Love them attentively. Love them patiently. Love them, listen to me, love them gratefully. She needs a sincere thank you every now and then. Not just today, but a lot of days. And she needs it to come from a genuine heart. Not just something that she expects, but that you really let her know, Mama, I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for you. I know when my children were growing up, someone told my wife and I, said, you're living the best days of your life right now. You have your children, and you have your parents. Well, my mama had died. My daddy was living. Her parents were living. And it caused me to realize 2 truths. One about our parents. We won't always have them here. You remember that. They won't always be there. It won't always be where you can pick up the telephone and dial their number, and on the other end you'll hear their voice. It won't always be where you hit the answer machine and you'll hear them talk to you. Give me a call. I love you. And another thing about our children. We need to live so that they can see Christ in us and see that we love each other and that we love their grandparents. So let's be kind to our parents, because we ought to be. And then we ought to love her generously. There's nothing too good for your mama. There is no way that you can ever repay your mama. But let me tell you something. There's no way we can ever repay her. But we ought to die trying before she does. You hear me? Because she's not always going to be here. She didn't spend on herself unless all your needs were met. She could so easily do without things. And now it's time, listen to me, it's time for her to have some of the things that she wants. And we need to remember that. I can think of my children's mama. Mary's the same way. You got to convince them. Keep on at them. Now you need to buy you a new dress for Easter. You need to buy you something. You need to do some things for yourself. Oh, I'm okay. And she'll go out and buy something for the children. Well, she'll clear a schedule for you, and she did. Take you here and yonder and everywhere. She gives up opportunities. And she gave up opportunities so that you could have the opportunities that you need, so that you could be the person and have the career and do the things that you wanted to do. We need to remember that. You remember when maybe you had some pie and there wasn't but 1 or 2 pieces left, 3, whatever. Mama would say, well, I really don't want any, so that you maybe could have that piece or have an extra piece, or all of you could have some. Remember those times? Mamas were like that. Love her generously, then love her honorably. Exodus 20:12, listen to me, it says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Folks, this is binding as long as your mama lives. You hear me? That's binding as long as your mother lives. Another command says, children, obey. Now, this commandment is not binding when you leave home. But honor is binding when you're at home and when you leave home. That's different. If a husband is the head of the home, then the mother is the heart. So don't break her heart. Don't do that. Yeah, but my mama wasn't honorable. Well, as I look back and read that, the Bible says nothing about qualifications when it comes to that. It only asks, is she your mother? By the way, that's the only commandment of the 10 Commandments, which includes a built-in promise of blessing. And I want to conclude this morning by reading a song, really, a letter or whatever. I heard this week. Some of you have heard it by Jimmy Dean. And I wanted to close by reading this because I listened to it, got emotional and cried. It did me good. He says, you know, most people look through their wallets, and I could think about this myself, or their pocketbooks, and way down at the bottom past the credit cards, the baby pictures and so on, you usually find a little old piece of dog-eared poetry. In cleaning out my wallet, he said the other day, I ran across a whole bunch of IOUs. Some of them 35 years overdue. And you know the funny thing, all these IOUs are owed to one person. And I kind of felt like that maybe now would be a pretty good time for an accounting. Mom, I sure hope you're listening. Sweet lady, I owe you for so many things, a lot of services, like night watchman, for instance. Lying awake nights listening for calls and cries and creaking floorboards and me coming home too late. Boy, you had the eye of an eagle and the roar of a lion, but you always had a heart as big as a house. I owe you for services like short order cook, chef, baker, for making sirloin out of hamburger and turkey out of tuna fish and a big old strapping boys out of leftovers. I owe you for cleaning services, the daily scrubbing of face and ears, for work done by hand, and for the frequent dusting of a small boy's pants to try to make sure that he led a spotless life, and for washing and ironing that no laundry could ever do, for drying the tears of childhood and ironing out the problems of growing up. I owe you for services as a bodyguard, for protecting me from the terrors of thunderstorms and nightmares and too many green apples. And Lord knows I owe you for medical attention, for nursing me through measles and mumps and bruises and bumps and splinters and spring fever. And oh, let's not forget medical advice. Important things like if you keep on scratching that, it won't ever heal. Or if you cross your eyes, they're going to stick that way. And probably the most important advice of them all, boy, you be sure that you got on clean underwear in case you have an accident. And I owe you for veterinarian services, for feeding every lost dog that I dragged home at the end of the rope, and for healing the pains of puppy love. And I owe you for entertainment that kept the household going during some pretty rough times. And for wonderful productions at Christmas, 4th of July, birthdays, and for making believes come true. And you did it all on such a limited budget. I owe you for construction work, for building kites and confidence, hopes and dreams, and somehow you made them all touch the sky. And for cementing together a family so it would stand the worst kinds of shocks and blows, and for laying down a good, strong foundation to build a life on. I owe you for carrying charges, for carrying me on your books, for the necessities of life that a growing boy somehow, they just got to have. Things like a pair of high-top boots with a little pocket on the side for a jackknife. And one thing, Mom, I'll never forget, when there were 2 pieces of pie and 3 hungry people, you were always the one who decided, well, I'm not really that hungry anyhow. These are just a few of the things for which payment is long overdue. The person that I owe him to worked very, very cheap. She managed by simply doing without a whole lot of things that she needed herself. My IOUs add up to more than I could ever hope to repay. But you know the nicest thing about it all? That I know that she had marked the entire bill paid in full for just one little kiss and for just 4 little words. I love you. These are some ways that we can love our mama.